everybody. Welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we're going to be talking about your strengths, your authentic strengths, and we have author Fatima Doman here, and she's going to be talking all about your strengths, why they matter, and how you can use your strengths to create a happy and fulfilling life. So welcome, Fatima.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, um, so tell me, what are authentic strengths? Because that's the first time I had heard the word character strengths, rather. What are those?
So they are 24. There are 24 strengths that scientists have cataloged.
Hmm.
And actually, people in over 196 countries, over 4 million people have taken the strength survey online. It's
Hmm.
a scientific survey that helps you discover positive aspects of your personality.
Okay, so there are positive aspects of your personality. And I was looking at Strengthsfinder, which is the Gallup one, and they're very different. Like I looked at the list that they have, and I looked at your list, and there's another one called Strength Scope, and yet again, it's another list. How do you think that they're different?
There are some significant differences. First of all, the character strengths, which were cataloged by positive psychologists, are a list of your strengths and virtues. And there are 24. StrengthsFinder really focuses more in on five, and
Hmm.
they're more talents and skills that they're looking at. So
Hmm.
the difference really is that strengths, character strengths, are what you care about doing, and with StrengthsFinder, they are talents or skills that you do well. And they actually are very synergistic because if you use your character strengths, you can elevate your talent and skills.
Okay, got it. Okay, but you can have. Is your character strength also a talent then as well?
We like to call it a strength of character rather than a talent. It's different than a talent because it's more of a motivator. It's what gives you energy and enthusiasm in life.
Okay.
Um, so character strengths, we know from the research, create greater resilience, greater energy, greater enthusiasm. They've also been directly correlated with well-being indicators
Hmm.
like a stronger immune system and so forth. So it's more of a, an emotional and mental well-being.
Okay, and I'm going to read some of these out there for folks who may be like, I still don't understand. I still don't understand. Okay, so things like honesty, perspective, creativity, love, curiosity. In some ways, they feel like a cross between perhaps a value and a strength to me. Like if I think about these words: perseverance, judgment, social intelligence, humor, zest, hope, love of learning, forgiveness, humility, fairness, leadership, teamwork, gratitude, bravery, kindness, self-regulation, prudence, and appreciation of beauty. And I read these based on my character strengths, but they're not alphabetical, so this is in no particular order aside from ones that make sense for me. So these are the 24 character strengths that the VIA Institute, which is who, who are those people? I've never even heard
So
of them until
stands
recently.
for values stands for values in action,
Uh huh.
and the VIA Institute on Character is located in Cincinnati, Ohio. Dr. Martin Seligman, who's known as the father of the positive psychology movement,
Hmm.
founded the institute. And the reason he founded it is because, as you know, psychology uses a catalog called the DSM,
Hmm.
which catalogs human mental disorders and things that can go wrong with with us mentally and emotionally.
Hmm.
And he, as a psychologist, felt that there needed to be a balance to that.
Hmm.
He felt that it would be extremely beneficial for people to be able to pattern after human flourishing, to learn what goes right with humanity, and to pattern after that, and to look at people and study people who have flourished and to understand why.
Hmm.
And what we have found from over 300 research studies around the world is that people flourish when they use their strengths of character.
Hmm.
So these strengths of character are positive aspects of our personality that allow us to thrive in life.
Okay, got it. So that is a very different kind of feeling than, and I don't remember what some of the ones. I actually have a strength scope report someplace around here, but do you remember what some of the ones are for strength scope? The five that they have, just as a
I'm
contrast.
just off the top of my head, I'd hate to mention them and get them wrong.
Okay,
And Strengthsfinder focuses on five as well, but they're
right.
more work related. That's another difference as
Mm-hmm.
well. So Strengthsfinder 2.0 really looks at um, how you perform in the work environment, whereas the VIA character strengths focus on um, what energizes you,
Okay,
what really engages you, not just at work, but
right.
in social relationships, at school, in all aspects of life. So it's a
Okay.
more global, holistic approach.
Okay. Because I remember, I can't even remember which one I took, but one of them is like, let's say, analytical, which is
Right.
actually a talent that I may have. I may be analytical by nature, but that doesn't necessarily, that may be a talent, which is a skill that I have that I can execute and implement at work. However, that's very different than a character, a character strength, which is something that I can actually be doing and would create fulfillment and happiness. I mean, I may actually be
Right.
really good at being analytical, which I am, but it's not necessarily something that brings me joy.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because I'm like yourself, I'm a coach, and I have another product called the Dependable Strengths. And what I like about that is very much like the character strengths. They actually look at things that they look at the intersection of what you love doing and what you're good at doing, and saying that these are dependable strengths, which are things that you can actually depend on over and over again to come to bring you happiness and joy in your life. And I think that that's actually when I frankly look at the some of the other assessments, I think that's what's missing because you may actually be really good. Like I'm really, really good at organizing people and getting massive amounts of people to catalyze and do something. I would be a great community organizer. However, I hate community organizing, so it doesn't. So it doesn't matter. You know, it's not a strength that is a character strength or a dependable strength. It's a skill that I have, but I don't like using it.
So, I'm looking at your list of strengths here because
Yeah.
you took the survey. By the way, anyone can take the survey for free
Hmm.
at authenticstrengths.com. Just
Okay.
go to the website, go down the landing page to the orange bar that says take the free strengths survey, and you can print off your results immediately. And so I'm looking at yours, CJ,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing that leadership is pretty far down the list. So even though you're really good at organizing
Yeah.
groups of people, like you said, it doesn't really energize you. It doesn't really fill your spirit.
Yeah.
Over time, you have that skill. You can do it. But over time, it may feel exhausting to do those type of activities long term. And I notice here that in your top three strengths,
Hmm.
creativity is one of your top three strengths.
Hmm.
Your radio show is a significant expression of creativity. That
Yeah.
just having worked with you, I see a lot of creativity that goes into what you produce.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that when you produce your radio shows, when you find new content and you think about how you want to share it with your listeners, that you're using your creativity and you probably feel really energized when you're doing it.
I do. I love coaching because if you look at my top five, so this is an example of, and I'm sorry I didn't go to your website to print it out, but I actually went to VIA, and
No, that's fine.
they
Either
had
one.
two different. So if I go to your website, would I be able to get the same
Yes,
output as these? Okay, got it. And so I
yes.
had to pay for these, which I should have done it for free on your website. But what I did is I paid for, and I think one of them is 20, and two of these reports are 50. But I can go to your website, and will I get a list stack rank like the one that I got on
Right.
VIA?
You'll get, if you the free report is only 2 pages long.
Okay.
If you want the full reports that you have in your hands right
Yes.
now,
Uh-huh.
those are the same cost as they are on the VIA website. So my company is a distributor of VIA. We are partners with VIA here in the United States, and so you can access the survey on my website or on the VIA website.
Okay.
It's
Cool.
survey.
And would I get like a equivalent of this, which is a stack rank list of my
Right.
strengths? Okay. And so what's interesting about this report is I'm showing you the wrong page, but there's several different strengths that are out here, and it categorizes these strengths in different categories. Some of them are your you call them signature strengths. So I have my signature strengths, which it shows on this report, which I assume are the top five, which I
They
had of the 24: honesty, perspective, creativity, love, and curiosity were in my top five. Now, and different people have different ones. Like one of the things that I love that you had in your book, Authentic Strengths, is you talked about different people, and you talked about your own mother and how you're, I think you were going back for a family event and you're thinking about her and you're thinking about her strengths relative to your strengths, and that maybe that's why there's, maybe it's like she had unappreciated strengths that you didn't appreciate, but then once you actually saw her from that perspective, you thought, oh wow, I just didn't recognize it. So I literally look at my signature strengths and I look at my weakest strengths. And my weakest strengths are the ones that my mom has she has prudence. Like those are her strengths that are really beautiful and strong. And until reading your book, I never saw her in that light. And now seeing her, that those are her character strengths, it made me have a much greater appreciation. Like, yeah, she has strengths, and these are beautiful strengths, and every person is beautiful, and here are her strengths. And this is also why we don't get along. Like, they're like, not that we don't get along, we get along fine, but you know what I mean? Like, why we don't appreciate each other as much as we should is because my lowest five are her greatest five. And so, in some ways, I think that the opportunity is there to actually help balance the two of us if we can see it that way, right? Which now, having after read your book, Authentic Strengths, I'm thinking, okay, now I can look. It's almost like shifting the way that I look at her to just see the beauty, inherent beauty that she has versus the what, like, why aren't you like me? Which is what I think, I think most of us do.
Most of us do that. And what you just shared, CJ, is really deep, actually. I mean, just think about it. Some of our most significant relationships, you're talking about your relationship with your mother,
Mm-hmm.
and my relationship with my mother really improved by learning to appreciate their strengths. And
Mm-hmm.
think about the power of that if we could use that at work, in all of our relationships, in our personal lives. So we call it strength spotting. And we know that it improves relationships. And we also know that what we call strengths collisions, that's when you have different strengths than you were saying your mother. They're almost absolutely opposite, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you can collide with people like that, unless, of course, you learn to appreciate the differences in their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And the results can be phenomenal. It really helped me with my relationship
Yeah,
with.
because it's like you said, it's all relationships, whether it's relationships that you have with your family or at work. Because, not surprisingly, the people who bug me at work the most are people who have the same set of my character strengths that are not as strong, that don't show up reliably, or ones when other people demonstrate. I could honestly say it used to irritate me at work, and now I can go, oh, I get it. Like these are just they actually, if you recognize them and say, I'm not really good at this prudence thing, so this is something that you can help me with. That we're in the project, the two of us together on a project are going to create something better with the two of us together than either of us would produce alone. And that's so different than the way that we think. We just feel irritated by people, I think, at
Right.
work instead of appreciating them.
You're absolutely right. And think of the power in that. If we can learn to leverage our differences instead of having them divide us, if
Yes.
we can learn to have them serve us, just think how much more we could achieve at work and how much more smoothly our relationships would progress. It really is a beneficial thing to understand those dynamics.
Yeah. So
Point about
I want to go back to some of the basic definitions. So they're signature strengths. All right. So
right.
I have my signature strengths. What does one do with these? So mine is honesty, perspective, creativity, love, and curiosity. Now knowing these, what would I do with these?
Okay, so the first thing you would do is look at that list and ask yourself, do these feel authentic? Do
Hmm.
these reflect the real me? Is this kind of my core, my center? And have people noticed these in me before? For example, in looking at yours, have people told you before you're a very honest person, or that you're a very creative person, or a very curious person, and so forth? You probably have had some of
Yeah, I
that
have.
feedback throughout your
Yeah.
life. So then you can say, yeah, these really are my signature strengths. So first of all, you have to agree with them.
Yeah.
Then secondly, you can start to leverage them for greater energy and engagement. So if you're given a project and let's say it's a really big project, you have a deadline, you can look at that project and determine how can I use my top strengths to fulfill this project so that I don't get burned out, so that I stay engaged and excited about working on this project.
Hmm.
And when you start to look at your performance through that lens, you will find that your performance will increase. Your ability to produce will expand when you start to look at anything that you need to do through the lens of your strengths.
Okay, so I want to actually, you talk about your book about goals. You call them your strong goals, and so is that right? So strength-based operating goals. So I'm going to actually take one that's very common, not a work-related one, but something that's very common right around this time of year, which is I want to lose 4 pounds before we go to our trip in Hawaii. So that's like a very common kind of thing, which doesn't seem like it would map necessarily to these five goals. But how would I take that goal, which is specific? So I want to actually lose 4 pounds by December 16th before we go to Hawaii. It's mostly a vain problem, but vanity issue. But I also want to do it for my overall health too.
Mm-hmm.
So how
Good.
would I create a strong goal versus the normal goal that we all have, right? I want to lose weight before this, or there are going to be a whole bunch of goals that people are going to create starting New Year's that have this kind of arc and bent to it. So how would I use this information?
So the key aspect of strong goals is that it's strengths focused. That's the
Okay.
number one most important thing in achieving a strong goal. So I looked at your strengths, your
Hmm.
top signature strengths: honesty, perspective, creativity, love, curiosity. Okay. So how can you leverage those strengths to lose the 4 pounds before December 16th? First of all, research tells us that when you're working toward a goal rather than away from a goal, you are, rather than trying to avoid something, I want to lose, 4 pounds, is not as motivating as what you do want.
Hmm.
So maybe you want to feel good in your swimsuit. Maybe you want to have more energy while you're on vacation. Maybe you want your clothes to fit better and just be more comfortable in your clothing. So working toward a goal, want what you want instead of what you don't want.
Okay, so I can tell you what I don't. If I think about what I want, what I would like is if I actually I could literally chart my weight on a monthly chart, and around November, December, I should start gaining weight, and then I spend almost January, probably between now and February, I put on weight, and then I spend the rest of the time trying to lose that weight. And it's
Right.
just like a aggravating cycle of insanity, right? I mean, it's just in a lot of ways, I actually don't think it's healthy for my body to have this cycle of like gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight. I actually think it's not kind for my body to kind of do that back and forth. So before, I've seen this enough times now in my life that I think, okay, I'm about to go on that cycle again, but I don't have to go on that cycle if I don't want. So in a lot of ways, it's just to be kind to my body because I don't think it's healthy to go up and down, up and down, up and down.
Okay, so that self kindness, right?
Okay. All right.
It's a big motivator for you.
Yes.
Uh, and the health aspect. So looking at your top strengths, love is your fourth strength down here.
Right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Self love. You could use self love as a motivator. You could use that strength. How can you be more loving to yourself? So instead of telling yourself, I am going to give up desserts. I'm not going to think about or eat chocolate cake.
Okay.
If you look at it that way, chocolate cake will become your obsession.
Right.
But because you'll it's just like telling someone, don't think about the pink spotted zebra in the room.
Right.
All of a sudden you'll conjure up pink spotted zebras in your mind. So instead, replace it with something you want to go to. If you can focus on self love, and I'm looking here at honesty, perspective, creativity, love, curiosity, even spirituality is very high for you.
Mm-hmm.
So love, self love. How can you make food choices that are kind to your body? That when you're eating them, you're telling yourself, wow, I'm being really good to myself. I'm,
Ah, I like it. Okay, yeah. So like if I'm grabbing for the carrot and going, God, this is an exercise of self-love by grabbing onto this carrot. And then I look at the pecan pie and I go, is that really loving to
yeah,
myself? And I say, well, not really. Or yeah, it is, but do it in moderation because if you actually eat this whole two pieces of pecan pie versus a quarter piece of pecan pie, you're gonna be in self-loathing and by tomorrow morning. So out of out of self-love for yourself, eat the bite or two. And it's like to deny yourself is probably not loving too. You know what I mean? So it's probably having the conversation all anchored around my character strength of love. Is that what I'm hearing? Is how
that's
you
it.
would use it? Okay.
You got it.
Okay.
And just try it and see how powerful it is. All of
Yeah.
a all of a sudden you'll be gravitating toward all these great food choices, or making the time to go for a walk, or making the time to get to the gym out of self-love, not out of duty, not out of, oh, I have to lose these 4 pounds, but instead, I love myself to schedule time to go to the gym. I love myself enough to go for a walk. Um,
Mm.
Different that is.
Yeah, yeah, that does feel that it just changes the whole energy. I understand what you're talking about with energy because you'd say, if I walked back from the gym and said, "You are so fantastic. Look how you loved yourself and how going to the gym was an exercise of self-love. Good for you." It's very different than like, well, at least you went to the gym today. How about yesterday? Like
Yeah. Or even saying something like, instead of that piece of pecan pie, I'm going to go read my favorite book, or listen to my favorite
right,
music, or take a bubble bath.
right.
And, acts of
Mhm.
self love that are different and
Mhm.
healthier.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In fact, when I was looking, I was thinking about this whole approach of strengths and how unique and how sorely needed it is because really it's about in a lot of ways I can put this in the frame of self love because all these things are about taking the things that are uniquely you and just loving them, right? And appreciating them. And the whole idea of when Tech Nhat Hanh talks about seeds that we plant and which seeds we water so that they can grow, if we can actually take these signature strengths or whatever strengths we have and constantly water them, it
Yes.
just creates just this field of reinforcement and happiness, I think, because you're doing things that you love doing and you're doing them well and you're getting kind of reinforcement. Oh, it's kind of a cycle, I think.
Absolutely. Did you know that there's actually research that shows if you'll even do it just for 1 week? And I want to challenge the listeners to do
Yeah.
this thing. Okay, just 1 week. That's all I'm asking for. Find out what your top strengths are and find a way to use one of your top strengths every day for 1 week. A new way to
Mm.
use a strength, one of your top strengths, every day for 1 week. The research shows that if you will make that 1 week investment in yourself, and maybe it's even just 5 minutes a day for 1 week, that on average, anxiety and depression take a big plunge down.
Mm-hmm.
We have a mood boost. There's a significant mood boost that we experience. And even more exciting, that mood boost lasts about 6 months.
Wow, that's really
Most we
exciting.
exercise, yeah.
Yeah. So then that we could, so let's say mine is curiosity. That's the one that I want to pick. So then basically I would be doing things within that you said 1 week time or a month time?
1 week,
One
just one
week.
week. So find a new way to use curiosity every day for 1 week.
Right, right. Because you're kind of going into the things that bring you energy so that I can see how that would change things up and then have a long lasting effect. Okay, I want to go back. I want to zoom back all the way to the beginning when you said so when people get their report, there'll be some signature strengths. And I don't know for the report on your website, do you actually have like which were the people's signature strengths or should you just assume they're your top 5?
Assume they're your top 5.
Okay. And so you'd said one thing that was interesting. You said, well, assuming that you own these strengths or believe in them, or I can't remember what you said, embrace them. I think you said in your book. What does that look like when people, because you may have, and I actually have had this in dependable strengths where I had strengths that I didn't necessarily like. Really, like I don't what like I don't get it. So what does one do if they're in that kind of scenario where they get something on this list and they thought, "What? I don't get this at all." What does that mean generally?
And that's where you do what I mentioned earlier. Ask yourself if it's authentic.
Mhm.
Ask yourself if others have noticed it. Ask yourself if it energizes you. Ask yourself if you were not able to use one of those strengths, would you feel empty inside? And there
Okay.
may be one of your top strengths that surprises you, and that maybe we call it strengths blindness. You may have been
Mm.
blind in the past. You may question it. You don't have to consider it one of your top strengths. You can go to the next strength on the list if it feels more authentic for you, because ultimately you are the final judge in what your top strengths are.
Mhm. It's funny because what I usually say to clients is if that you're not owning it, then it's like you have this powerful tool that you're not that you're just saying, yeah, just leave the Ferrari in the garage. Just because I don't know, understand it, I'm not sure what it is, and I don't believe that it even exists. But I think that I don't know. I think of some ways if you have a strength, why not try to figure out what it is and what it means to you and embrace it versus, like you said in the book, versus putting it away and going, I don't know, let's just move to the next one on the list. I don't know. That's my own perspective. But what do you think about that?
No, I think that makes great sense. And one more thing that might help you and the listeners is if you do embrace those top strengths and you want to do that 1 week challenge or you want to really work on using those strengths more often, there are ideas in the back of my book. They're
Yes.
called strengths building exercises. So you can go to the back of the book and you can focus in on one or two strengths for a week and build those strengths over that week. And
Yes.
you can even draw upon some of your lesser strengths, the ones that are lower down on the list. If
Mm-hmm.
you have something in your life that's requiring one of those strengths, that's really calling one of those strengths forward, you can build a strength at any time. And I can share with you examples of that. For example, you mentioned that gratitude, you had mentioned to me
Yeah.
that gratitude was one of your lower strengths.
Yeah, so then
Where's
I'm
the
showing this list. So these are your signature strengths. These are your middle strengths. I think I'm using the right terminology. And
yeah,
these are what are the last 5 called?
we
The
call them our lesser strengths.
Okay, your lesser strengths. And I assume that if I were to get your list online, I'd look at the last 5, and these would be your lesser strengths. Is that
Right.
right? So mine are bravery, kindness, self-regulation, prudence, and appreciation of beauty. And you actually had a list of strengths. I can't remember what they were, but they were spiritual in nature, the ones that bring people the most happiness when they focus on. And gratitude is one of them. I think probably appreciation of beauty is another, and probably kindness is another, which are almost on my bottom 6. So I thought, wow, that's interesting. I don't know if that's problematic, but that's interesting. So, going back to what you're saying, you have these underused strengths. How does one kind of build up their underused strengths?
Right. So I'm going to share with you an example. So I worked with someone who had perseverance as almost last
Mm-hmm.
on her list of strengths, and curiosity was very, very high. And she said that explains things. I'm always so curious. I go from one idea to the next, and then I get kind of bored, and I go on to the next idea, and I tend to not finish things. And
Mm.
tired of having unfinished projects.
Mm.
She chose to raise her perseverance. And it's really interesting what happened as a result of that. She started keeping a list on her desk. Her name is Allie.
Hmm.
She kept a list on her desk of all the projects she would start and finish, and she
Oh,
would consciously do strengths building activities for perseverance. And do you know that she raised perseverance significantly for herself? And she says, I get so much energy by finishing a project now. I just needed to rewire my brain that way. And it was something that she chose for herself.
mm,
She truly wanted to change. So at any point in our lives, we can build a strength. We can learn how to express the strength more fully.
I think that if you were to look at, I was thinking bravery, which is on my bottom five.
Right.
It when if you were to if I were to take this when I was age five or like probably sorry 15, it'd be my top one. But over time, I've realized like, well, I really don't have to speak up as much. It's one of these things that I think that I assume that these change over time with your own personal work and I don't know whether love would have been one of my top five when throughout my whole life, but it is now. Now that I'm in my 50s, it is, but it probably was not, my 30s or 20s, it wouldn't have been. So do you see that? I don't know whether you've worked with clients over a really long duration, but do you see that this list changes over time?
It can change over time, and I have worked with people who took the survey 5 years ago, and now things are very different. For example, I worked with someone who gratitude was almost last on their
Mm-hmm.
list at the time, and then she had breast cancer, and she said the result of having lived through that experience caused her to really focus on gratitude.
Mm.
And she said it just naturally became one of her very top strengths now. And
Wow.
I've actually talked to two people who had serious illnesses like that who said that gratitude became a top strength after the illness.
Mm.
They reflected on their blessings a lot. They really went
Mm.
with their time and energy. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, different life events, the way we mature, the way our life progresses can affect our strengths ranking as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay, so the other idea that I wanted to touch upon is we've talked about underusing strengths, right? And how these, like mine, may actually change if I had any life change, different types of things. And then you talk about overusing, which I think is one of those things that we don't often look at because these are all, every single one of these things on her wonderful qualities. But you talk about overusing. What would that look like?
So it's actually possible to overuse every one of these strengths, even love, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's true. So have you heard the saying, he who is good with a hammer comes to think everything is a nail?
Yes.
So we may use strengths when the situation is not appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
For example, someone who has a top strength of humor may find themselves telling jokes perhaps when it's not appropriate at a funeral or in a setting where
Mm-hmm.
it's not appropriate. So it's very important to understand optimal use of our strengths. And
Mm-hmm.
we want to really stay away from overuse and underuse of our strengths.
Mm-hmm. So how do I know if I'm striking the right balance and I'm optimal?
So it's the results that you get from using that strength. If it's improving your relationships, if it's improving your performance, if you feel satisfied with the results that you're getting from using that strength, or are people giving you feedback?
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to be very present and to notice the type of feedback we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And if you stop and think about your best self experiences, when you were truly your best self and you accomplished things that you're very proud of, my guess is that you were using your strengths optimally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that that's true. So that's how you can almost look at your very best experiences and say, okay, was I feeling authentic or honest, perspective, creative, love, curiosity, and then and I can think of some of my best experiences, and they are. So that's how I know if I'm using these strengths in the optimal way.
that's right.
Excellent. Okay, and the underuse is more. So the underuse is more the ones on the bottom Is that how you look at it? Or there could just be some even in the middle that are not used very often, but that you may look at and go, gosh, if I did have more zest, maybe I would be achieving an optimal state. Is that how an underuse would look? How do you use, what's the underuse idea?
Well, you can look at any strength on that list. For example, it's possible even your top strengths. Sometimes people are in jobs where they don't they haven't really considered how they can use some of their top strengths, and
Mm-hmm.
they may start to feel like they're burning out
Mm-hmm.
and they're losing zest or interest in life in general. That's a sign that maybe you're underusing some very important strengths in your life.
Mm.
Like you said, the middle strengths or the lower strengths, those tend to not be the ones that energize you as much, but
Mm.
life may be demanding one or two of those strengths.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe I don't like, so leadership is one that I literally just talked to someone and they're like, you need to move into leadership. And I was like, no, thank you. And it's like pop number 7 from the below on my bottom part of the list because I'm good at it, but it doesn't bring me energy. Um, but yet I may be called to do it.
And if you are called to do it, and I was coaching you, I
Mm-hmm.
would strongly encourage you to find ways to build it that energize you. So I would work with you in maybe combining one of your top strengths,
Mm-hmm.
maybe love for the people you're leading, or maybe curiosity and taking great interest in the team that you're leading with the leadership so that you can have more enjoyment and energy around expressing leadership. So strengths
Right.
combination
Ah,
powerful.
right.
And the whole notion of combining strengths, it's like when you combine different metals to create alloy metals that are actually stronger.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with strengths. I mentioned earlier humor. Overusing humor can be a
Mm-hmm.
problem for any strength. But what if you combined humor with social intelligence?
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
a powerful combination that helps you to modulate that strength in the optimal zone more consistently.
I
So
see.
strength combinations are really helpful.
Right. So you could actually take something that maybe is a weakness of mine, like prudence. It's not a very strong strength of mine, and combine it with I don't know, creativity or I don't know what you would combine it with, but combining it with one that's on my top 5 or at least on the top 10, and that would actually help me when combining it. And you're talking about the alloys, it would actually be a stronger substance than if I were to just focus on prudence alone.
Right. And the lesser strengths, the ones that are lower on your list, we never talk about them in terms of weaknesses because we're not
Okay.
measuring weaknesses. The instrument only measures strengths. But what it does measure is that you're probably not expressing them that often, so they show up lower on your list.
Ah, okay. So these are my less expressed strengths.
And it's not that you can't develop any one of them. Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
You
cool.
can at any time. Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is the motivation grid because I found this thing fascinating because I thought, oh, more people need to see this motivation grid because it's fabulous. Can you tell us a little bit about the and it was in the section that you were talking about when you were talking about goals as well, and you're talking about authentic motivation, and you actually have this beautiful grid, um, which actually has your strengths based motivation and 3 others. Can you tell us about what this is?
Sure. So just leave that up on the screen so that people can follow along with me as I'm explaining it.
Yes.
What I've done is I've kind of plotted this out so that you can come to understand what motivates you most consistently and whether or not it's sustainable. That's the big question
Mm-hmm.
here. So a lot of us are motivated by things that are not sustainable, and
Mm-hmm.
it's helpful for us to see that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's the quadrant of alarm, there's the quadrant of overachieve, there's
Right.
the quadrant of apathy, and really all of those are not sustainable. I would say most people are motivated in the quadrant of alarm.
Mm-hmm.
You're motivated when something feels fearful. I mean, we're motivated to action,
Right.
right?
Right.
But over time, that can be really
Right.
exhausting.
It's not sustainable to actually be motivated by threatened by others, blame, critical, fight, flight, freeze, please, pressure, strain, stress, anxiety, worry, danger, threatened by competition, lack trust in relationships, downward spiral, unsustainable. The result is stress.
So we can see that over time that's unsustainable.
Right.
And even overachieve. I mean, it's very competitive, and there has to be a loser all the time. And you know, people who are really motivated by comparing themselves to others. Well, guess what? Eventually, there will be someone who's better at something than you are.
Right.
So it's really not sustainable either. And I have found through many years of coaching executives and really high performers that the ones that are the high performers are motivated by something very sustainable. So
Mm,
they keep that high performance going over time. And I found that they're the people who are really creative and that they're solution focused and that they know what their strengths are and they know how to use them. So
mm-hmm.
some people just intuitively know how to do that. And but for the rest of us, it will be very helpful to the listeners, I believe, to discover their strengths if they haven't discovered them already, and then learn how to use them consistently for that sustainable motivation.
Right. And then the third category is apathy. So,
Right.
and so I just want to kind of map this. So, alarm, and let's take the example of me losing weight, right? Which I feel like, am I going to be motivated by alarm? Like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I may actually have a heart attack if I continue gaining weight, and I feel stressed because, I'm like not going to be able to fit into my bathing suit. Like, that's an example of alarm. Like that kind of motivation is not sustainable. I mean, maybe it will get me through a little period of time, but it's not going to be sustainable through my whole life, right? To kind of act that way. And
Right.
maybe an overachiever would be kind of like, oh, well, I'm joining this, 10-step program, and it says that I'm trying to lose 4 pounds, but I'm going to try to lose 8. And my girlfriend actually lost 5, but I think I can beat her. Is that what the overachieve?
Kind of like overachieve.
Okay. And then apathy is not motivated. So diminished by others, hopeless, helpless, kind of like, oh, whatever. I'm not even going to bother. Like, why do this? This happens every year. Why not just let this wait happen and just admit defeat? Is that is that
Yeah.
apathy?
Pass the whole pie, please, and a fork.
Yes. And what I loved about this is that I think that before this chart, I think that we don't really realize that we're doing these three things. But if you find yourself, when I read this chart, I thought, well, if you find yourself in these three categories, that's
Mhm.
kind of a warning. It's almost like your signal that, oh, I need to go back to strengths. Like, how do I get to the point where I say that's not self-loving to eat the whole pecan pie? It's not that you're not going to feel your very best afterwards, and you want to feel your very best, don't you? So please don't eat the gigantic piece of pecan pie. So it's a very different kind of motivation, I think, which I think a lot of us don't even get, that we're motivated by these three categories. And the key thing that you said is we can't keep it up.
Yeah, it's not sustainable. And here's something else that I think is really significant. It's making a meaningful shift
Mm-hmm.
from focusing on what's wrong to what's strong.
Mm.
There are three categories: focus on what's wrong in life.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And you're always trying to fix that. But if you're focused on that, guess what? That's what will grow in your life.
Right.
Instead, what if you make that meaningful shift to, I'm going to focus on what's strong in my life and I'm going to grow that instead?
Mm-hmm. Now you have and riffing off of that, um, you have in your book this example of someone who, I don't know if this was, I can't remember if it was you or someone else, who talked about two different managers in their lives,
Right.
and one that was strengths based oriented and one that wasn't. And I so much love this that I thought, oh, if we have time at the end of the show, which we do, we have 5 more minutes, would you explain what this chart is all about? These two different managers, and if so, this would be in the context if you're at work and you're managing someone, and how would you manage them to and the strengths based orientation versus kind of what's wrong with me kind of orientation.
Right. So someone that I work with created that. I had been sharing all of the strengths content with her, and light bulbs started going off when we were talking about feedback and feed forward. And I was explaining the difference. So she listed a manager who had always used feedback with her versus a manager that used feed forward. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that's what you called it, but it was her most inspiring manager she'd ever experienced. And it
Mm-hmm.
was the manager who used feed forward. So feedback is when someone tells you, hey, this is what's wrong. These are your weaknesses. This is what we want you to correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very motivating to have those type of feedback conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And many of us have experienced those,
Oh
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas feed forward conversations really inspire people to rise to their highest level of potential. So she experienced a manager who would say, you know what you do really great? Can we get more of this? Because
Mm.
I love, how you're so creative with your work and with your students. She was working at a university, and
Mm-hmm.
how you really approach your lesson plans with creativity.
Mm.
Can bring more of that to work. So
Mm.
would have their yearly review or 6 month review. It would be centered around what this manager loved that she was doing and wanted to see more of. And she
Mm.
was always so motivated at the end of those reviews that I
Mm.
my game every time.
Mm.
Whereas the other manager, she had eventually quit that manager.
Mm-hmm.
The statistics. People typically don't quit their job, they quit their manager.
Mm.
Us
Mm.
could learn to manage people with feed forward techniques instead of feedback approach.
Right. And then the other thing was is actually setting goals that are based on those strengths. So you're so riffing off of that idea, you're such a great professor and you're so creative, and I also see that you're great at perspective. What we would love to do is like, how can we actually add that to a goal for this year? And so would the manager have, I assume, like they would have their strengths to say, okay, now I know what this person's top strengths are and how could I actually work with that person so they would be able to in their work demonstrate the strengths. What would you do if in fact the manager looks at us and like we don't need any of these, but I guess that's unlikely, right? Because these are things that are uniformly culturally appropriate everywhere. Is that right? Are there cases where the manager may be like, well, I don't know what to do with these strengths?
Not if they are coached on how to see those strengths in different ways. For example, you might think that the strength of love, which is one of your top strengths, and I coached an executive that was his number one strength,
Mm-hmm.
and we came to understand how you could use love at work in an
Mm-hmm.
appropriate way.
Mm-hmm.
Love for the company, love for your colleagues, and wanting the best for them. So it's all in how you frame it. I do coach leaders and executives on how to be a leader as strengths coach and
Mm-hmm.
how to use the information in their employees' strengths reports, if their employees are willing to share, to use feed forward techniques that are more motivating for
Mm-hmm.
their employees. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say that the gal that was the professor, she, and I don't know who she is, right? But let's say she just couldn't get she couldn't get her grades in on time. She was perfect. She was super creative, but like there was one critical aspect that we needed administratively for her to get her grades in on time. So let's say that her, I don't know, prudence was low. How would I
Yeah.
work with her if you only focus on the strengths? How would you work on areas that are under you? Maybe you call them underused strengths.
Right. Right. And actually, that's very interesting that you mentioned that because that's really the scenario that went on
Yeah.
previously with the other manager, and the other manager didn't know how to inspire her to raise her prudence, to be more timely, things like that. But this new manager that used Feed Forward did, and
Mm.
he was inspiring her with what creative ways, how can you be more creative in fulfilling time commitments.
Ah, interesting.
That's
So it's that the alloy thing of how can we use your strength and shore it
with
up. Ah. And so when she heard that he wanted to improve on time management or whatever, was that a problem for her? That sort of feedback, but also combined with this strength that made it feed forward. How did she react when she heard that?
Actually, it was so focused on her strength that it was encouraging. She could see how she could get it done, and also she felt so acknowledged and validated. And she saw that they were very valued
Yeah.
by this new manager. So it's a shift in how you lead people, leading them as
Interesting.
a coach. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so if people want to go to your website, your URL? Is it Authentic Strengths? Is that right?
That's right, AuthenticStrengths.com. And again, take the free strength survey. Just scroll down the landing page to the button that says take the free strength survey
Hmm.
and take a look at all of our programs and workshops. If you're interested in anything, you can email us directly.
Thank
Yes.
you so much.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.